everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome to my February 2026 reading vlog. So, it's halfway through the month and I am giving you my first update. Things have happened, I don't know. So, to start, I am 100 pages into War and Peace. Can't you tell? This one has been a little difficult to get through, but I am making my way through very, very slowly, and I hope to get to more of it very, very soon. The next thing that I read was that I decided to torture myself by reading the Grayson run by Tim Seeley and Tom King. So I read Volume 1, Agents of Spyral, Volume 2, We All Die at Dawn, and Volume 3, Nemesis. So, for these, I gave all of these 1 star. I thought that they were completely abysmal and terrible. The only mini issue that I enjoyed in here was Dick going through the desert with a baby and struggling to survive, and that was one issue. Everything else in here was just total garbage. I hated the way that they changed Helena's character. I hated the way that he is not acting like Dick Grayson at all. I hate all these new characters and the new spy agency Spyral. And I think that flipping back and forth between Tim Seeley and Tom King's writing was just a back and forth of the most cringe, horribly written action movie dialogue and just ironic drivel crap that I've ever read in a comic. So going from one author to another, there was no brevity. It was just torture on one end and then torture on the other end. So I hated this run. I never want to talk about this run again. So after I wrap up, this is being thrown into a fire. It's gone, and I hated this. This was torture. But thankfully, right after reading a horrible series of comics that were 1 star, my sibling recommended me a book that they read last month that they gave a really high rating, and I read it as well. I read Kindred by Octavia E. Butler, and this thankfully got 5 stars from me. This is such a fascinating story about a woman from 1976 who gets kind of drawn into time travel to go into the past during the antebellum South, during the slave days, because she is forced to help out the slave owner's son throughout his life when he is experiencing near-death experiences. So this was just such an interesting story, a really interesting premise on its own, and just the way that they tackled the themes of slavery and the themes of connection and the themes of like the way that slaves had to talk to their masters, and just the aspect of everyday slave life and how she was doing everything wrong because she was acting too white despite the fact that she's not white, she's black. And it was just such an interesting story. It was so compelling. I was horrified every time she had to go back because I was like, oh God, what's going to happen now? And the way that she had to struggle and the way she had to sacrifice things and the way that she had to harm herself in order to get back to her modern time, it just says so much about the slave experience, the black experience, and how that ties down even to her in 1976, where she is in an interracial relationship and she is fairly, you know, integrated into society and there's not a lot of problems for her. It just shows the legacy of slavery and how the things that she experiences, even if she never did experience them in her life, having to go back and re-experience them in this weird scenario affects you and how it affects her. And it is just such a well-written story. The language in here is very simple, but it is very powerful, and it says everything it needs to say. Every question you have gets answered, every scenario gets dealt with, and every relationship gets explained, and it is just so fascinating, her relationships between people in this book. I really, really enjoyed it. So once again, 5 stars for Kindred by Octavia E. Butler, and I might possibly read more of her work, but we shall see. As for what I'm going to be reading next, I have no idea, so stay tuned. Okay, here we are at the wrap-up. Sorry I did not do too many updates this month. It's the shortest month of the year. We've had like 2 feet of snow run through my town. Please give me a break. So for this month, I read 7 books. I read 59 more pages of War and Peace. Can't you tell? It is actually starting to get pretty interesting in that we are now following these soldiers during the war, and it is really showing just how little they do until the big stuff happens. So there was a whole bunch of chapters about miscommunication with the uniforms and how all of the soldiers were wearing the wrong thing when all the higher-ups showed up, as if any of that matters. So it is doing a very effective showing of how war, until it happens, isn't really doing much. Next, I read the 3 volumes of Grayson, and as I explained earlier, they were all 1 star. I hated them. There was no break between the cheesy, horrible, awful dialogue, the utter destruction of characters such as Dick and Helena, and I hated all of the new characters, and I didn't think any of the plots were very interesting. At least the art was pretty, but 1 star for all 3 of these suckers. I then read Kindred by Octavia E. Butler, and I gave this 5 stars. I thought that the writing was beautiful, simple, effective. Your eyes just could not be taken off of the page throughout the whole experience. I thought that this story was such an interesting and unique one, while also talking about very important historical and racial experiences. And I think that this was just a wonderful way of just showing the differences between 1976 and the antebellum South, the differences between white people and black people, and the differences between intelligence within these people and communication within all of these people, including these slaves, the white people, etc. And the importance of communication in society, and the importance of communication for safety, and the importance of caring for people even if they are cruel to you, the cycle of abuse, the cycle of violence, the understanding of these systems. There is just so much to tackle in this book and more. I have not even begun to dip my toe into the giant pool that this book contains. So I highly recommend this book for any who are interested in more, because I can only just list the things in here. I can't even begin to discuss the way that these are all tackled properly and answer all of your questions and also raise new ones. I could talk about this book for a really long time, so we will just leave it at that. I then listened to the audiobook of Tipping the Velvet by Sarah Waters. She is the author of Fingersmith, which has been adapted several times, including the Park Chan-wook film The Handmaiden. Now, Tipping the Velvet is also set in Victorian England, and it is about a young woman named Nancy who starts off shucking oysters with her family, and we then follow her throughout various stages of her life, first being in a theater, then becoming sort of a gentleman on the streets, then being taken in by a woman who uses her for sort of BDSM pleasures, and now finally, as we reach the end, we find her becoming a maid at a friend's house. I have given this book 3 stars. I thought it was very historically accurate, and I found it very fascinating to read about various sex work and various queerness going on in Victorian England, including all of the terms, all of the methods that you could be queer in Victorian England, which are normally never discussed. I thought it was very fascinating, and I did enjoy following her story. I found it to be a very fascinating story about how she experiences her queerness in different ways, and how she had to turn to sex work as a result of all of this. Just very fascinating stuff, and explores just a lot of otherwise unknown or underground systems going on in the queer world of Victorian England, and I enjoyed it very much. So I am glad that I listened to the audiobook of that. And then I ended the month reading Batman and Robin Eternal, Volume 1 and Volume 2 by James Tynion and Scott Snyder. These 2 books were in the middle of like a bunch of crap in the New 52, and of course I enjoy James Tynion and Scott Snyder's writing, And so there is a lot in here that was to be desired. However, I did enjoy what they were attempting to do in creating a system that was ultimately grooming children into becoming the perfect soldier and as well the perfect sidekick for Batman. Batman ends up exploring this child trafficking ring in order to pick out a new Robin, but of course he is trying to stop it, and it is up to Dick and all of the new members of the Bat family to end up figuring out why all of this is coming back to them and why this child trafficking ring led by Mother is targeting them to kill them. Very, very interesting way of incorporating a lot of the forgotten characters into the New 52. However, all of the New 52 crap was, you know, not as exciting and very convoluted and very annoying. But I did really enjoy the attempt of connecting Dick being raised by Bruce into this very horrible trafficking ring, and of course how various characters, including Cassandra and John Paul Valley, are now considered part of this group in this canon. So I thought it was alright. They both got 3 stars from me. So that's it. That was my reading month. I consider this month a write-off. It was too short. It was too cold. It was brutally cold. We got a lot of cold snaps. We got a lot of snowfall. It was just not a fun month, and I did not want to be sitting down and reading as much. I'm really hoping next month I kick into high gear. I get back into my typical reading regimen, and I enjoy a lot more books that are coming my way. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye.